In all Buddhist schools and traditions, suicide is viewed as an extremely negative and harmful act. The reasons for this attitude lie in the fact that by taking one's own life, a person interrupts their path of development and deprives themselves of the opportunity to do many good deeds. An example of this is the tragic story of an 18-year-old who ended his life because of a broken heart. Such cases, unfortunately, are not uncommon. Many young people around the world commit suicide, and a significant proportion of these tragedies occur as a result of romantic experiences. Just think, the whole life of this young man was cut short. Over time, he would have forgotten this girl. His feelings would have subsided. He could have lived a long and fulfilling life, perhaps achieved great success, met a loving woman, started a family, and benefited society. But now all of that is gone. He threw away all the wonderful opportunities that could have been realized, all because of a romantic attachment to a girl who did not appreciate him. Secondly, taking the life of any being, including oneself, is an act of violence, which is categorically unacceptable from the point of view of Buddhist philosophy. In Buddhism, harming oneself, self-torture, and suicide are in direct contradiction with the fundamental principle of non-harming, the cornerstone of Buddhist ethics. These actions violate the 5 precepts, in particular the first precept, to abstain from taking the lives of living beings. Suicide is a path dictated by unhappiness, which does not bring relief, but only exacerbates suffering. Many people who have survived suicide attempts say that at the most critical moment they realized their mistake, but it was too late. They experienced horror and torment, bleeding, suffocating in a noose, or writhing from poison. Often suicide does not happen as planned. Once the author of these lines learned from a friend who worked as a doctor in a hospital about a tragic case. A man who decided to take this desperate step jumped off a roof, but did not die. Instead, he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury and spent a long time in hospital with a rotting brain, as doctors were unable to repair his head. There is nothing sublime or romantic about murder or suicide. It is an act of harm, which is terrible and unacceptable both to others and to oneself. Thirdly, the act of suicide negates all the efforts and endeavors of loved ones. Taking one's own life is a tragic act, especially when you remember how much love and effort parents put into raising a person. Sleepless nights, care, support, all this is devalued by one rash decision. Sometimes a person standing on the edge naively believes that their departure will make others realize the loss and repent. However, as life shows, indifferent people will remain indifferent, and loving people will suffer deeply. Fourthly, there are 2 opposing points of view on life and death. The first is a manic desire for immortality, a reluctance to accept the fact that existence is finite. But death is a natural process, and everyone is destined to leave. So why rush the inevitable? The second extreme is the desire to disappear, to dissolve into oblivion, to escape from the difficulties of life. However, the reality is that we already exist, and this fact cannot be changed. Excessive enthusiasm for either of these extremes leads to unhappiness and disappointment. It is important to find a balance and accept life in all its fullness, with all its joys and sorrows. Firstly, one should beware of sects that preach the sanctity of suicide, self-torture, or self-mutilation. Such doctrines, which present the world and the human body as something vicious and sinful, have devastating consequences for mental, social, and physical health. In Buddhism, on the other hand, human life, especially endowed with reason, knowledge, and the ability to learn, is revered as a precious human birth, a rare and priceless gift. Secondly, from a Buddhist point of view, suicide is a path to the lower realms, to the hellish abodes. The reason lies in the state of mind of the suicide, who is usually in the throes of negative emotions, suffering, and mental turmoil. His mind, like a semblance of hell, is full of torment and dark experiences. Buddha taught that living beings are reborn in those worlds that correspond to their inner state. A person who dies in a state of depraved mind, full of suffering and misfortune, will inevitably fall into a world that reflects his inner darkness. Moreover, the act of suicide is murder, creating extremely negative karma. Thus, suicide not only does not relieve suffering, but also exacerbates it, leading to even more difficult rebirths. Seventhly, from the point of view of Buddhist philosophy, the act of suicide is devoid of any meaning and seems to be the worst possible decision, assuming the finiteness of existence. A person contemplating such a drastic act hopes to end their mental anguish, escape overwhelming problems, and dissolve into oblivion, but their expectations are destined to be unmet. The longed-for oblivion will not arrive. After physical death, the individual enters an intermediate state, which many who have experienced near-death experiences describe as floating outside their own body and witnessing various visions corresponding to their beliefs. However, the emotional pain and suffering do not disappear. Moreover, because the dense physical shell no longer restrains emotions and thoughts through the nervous system, all the negative experiences of the suicide are magnified tenfold, acquiring an unbearable intensity. The state of mind and emotions, both throughout life and at the moment of death, is of paramount importance. All the sorrow and bitterness from which the person sought to escape fall upon them with tenfold force, like an avalanche, making them even more likely to be reborn in the lower realms, in hell. Even the ominous glow of the gates of hell may seem attractive and comforting, while the bright worlds will be blinding, as their current state corresponds precisely to the lower realms. Suicide brings no relief whatsoever from suffering, either emotional or mental, but only exacerbates it. It is a horrific and utterly pointless act. The vast majority of people prone to suicidal tendencies suffer from various mental disorders, which may have a physiological basis. Often, these people are unaware of their condition, as they have never undergone a thorough medical examination. In the event of suicidal thoughts, even if they seem fleeting and unobtrusive, it is crucial to seek help immediately from qualified psychotherapists. If financially possible, it is advisable to consult private specialists, as saving on health in this case is unwise. However, lack of funds should not be an obstacle, as there are free helplines and clinics where you can receive the necessary treatment, including medication and psychotherapy sessions. Do not neglect treatment, as modern medicine has a powerful arsenal of tools to provide effective help. Of course, life can be full of difficulties and challenges, but often we create additional problems for ourselves. In reality, our basic needs are reduced to food, drink, and breathing, that is, to survival, and everything else is just an addition. If a person manages to meet these needs, then they have already won. Everything else is just a matter of choice and opportunities. If something is putting so much pressure on you that you have thoughts of suicide, then perhaps you should simply eliminate that factor from your life. After all, there was a time when this factor did not exist, and life was quite prosperous. Suicide due to loans, financial problems, difficulties at work, failures, loss of loved ones, problems in personal life, or stress caused by the complexity of existence is like a person taking on an unbearable burden and breaking under its weight. Instead of taking your own life, you should simply get rid of all this burden. You can change your place of residence, move to another city, country, or village, and start living as you wish. You can declare bankruptcy, change your name and appearance, and start with a clean slate. It is important to give yourself a chance to breathe freely. As a last resort, you can leave all worldly cares and go to a monastery. Any of these options would be more reasonable and effective than suicide. In the absence of serious mental disorders, many life troubles are overcome with time, which acts as a healer. The human mind and emotional sphere have amazing protective mechanisms and the ability to self-repair. However, just as a deep physical wound does not heal instantly, one should not expect immediate healing from emotional wounds. It is necessary to continue living, breathing, eating, sleeping, focusing on the present moment, and gradually hours will turn into days, and days into months. Over time, step by step, the condition will improve, and emotions and mind will come into balance. At the same time, just as a serious wound on the body requires treatment and care, the psyche also needs help. There are various methods that contribute to the restoration of mental health. Do not forget about mental hygiene and preventive measures. A feeling of loss and lack of purpose in life is a common phenomenon in the modern world, which places high demands on a person. The atomized society, the destruction of traditional social institutions and values, constant competition, and the pursuit of material success create enormous pressure. Without a clear meaning of life, enduring this pressure becomes an impossible task. Many people experience a spiritual void, a lack of core values, direction, and goals that extend beyond basic needs. Life becomes reduced to the pursuit of experiences, comfort, pleasures, and the money that provides them. For some, this is acceptable, but others acutely feel this spiritual emptiness, being more sensitive to it. In such cases, the search for meaning in life becomes a bold, exciting, and heroic adventure. Finding what will fill the spiritual vacuum will become a reliable support and core in life. If we accept the hypothesis of the soul's immortality, then the human self represents an eternal psychophysical flow from which there is no escape. It is necessary either to heal oneself or to continue suffering. If there is a strong desire to leave this problematic world, it should be done not through self-destruction, but through positive development and upward movement. It is necessary to learn to live in peace with oneself and others, so as not to fall victim to one's own carelessness and not to submit to destructive forces. Then horizons of reality and the depth of one's own consciousness will open up to a person, which they had never suspected before. After all, the human mind can be both a source of the deepest suffering and an inexhaustible source of joy and peace. It all depends on the ability to control it. If any of your acquaintances shows signs of suicidal tendencies, harms themselves, or expresses thoughts of suicide, it is necessary to immediately inform their family and friends and strongly recommend seeking professional help. This will be the most valuable thing you can do for that person in that situation. If a person is haunted by obsessive suicidal thoughts or intentions, it is extremely important to immediately consult qualified specialists. There are free helplines, professional psychotherapists, and doctors ready to provide support and help. A person will not be left to the mercy of fate. They are not alone in their struggle. The author, sharing the views of all Buddhists in the world, sincerely wishes everyone, be happy and find a meaning for happiness in your life.